Claire stood in her driveway staring at the old Ford that hadn't moved in weeks. The car had become more than a broken machine. It was a symbol of how her life had slowed down since Michael, her husband, passed away 2 years ago. The silence of her home had grown heavy, and even the simplest tasks now felt like uphill climbs. Every morning before work, she'd turn the key in the ignition, hoping for a miracle. But all she got was the dull sound of a dying engine. That morning was no different. She sighed, brushing her hair back as she closed the hood with a tired thud. Just then, Ethan stepped outside. He was her stepson, 24 years old, freshly out of college and back home for the summer. When he was younger, he'd been lively, always laughing with his dad. But now he was quiet, calm, and thoughtful, a young man trying to find his place in the world. "You're still fighting with that old thing?" he asked, his voice soft but teasing. Claire managed to smile. "Yeah, but I think it's finally given up." He looked at the car for a moment, then back at her. "I can take a look at it after dinner if you want." She hesitated. He was good with machines just like his father, but she didn't want to bother him. "You've got enough to think about, Ethan. Don't worry about this old car." He shook his head. "I don't mind. Besides, I could use something to do." That evening, the air carried the smell of rain and oil as Ethan opened the hood and began to inspect the engine. The sun was setting, and a soft, golden light fell across his face. Claire stood beside him, holding a flashlight. It flickered once or twice, but she kept it steady. "What's wrong with it?" she asked. He leaned closer, checking the cables and connections. "Looks like the alternator's dead. That's why it won't hold charge." She nodded, pretending to understand. "Is that bad?" He smiled faintly. "Not too bad. I can fix it. I'll need a few parts, but it'll run again." There was something about the way he said it, confident but gentle, that caught her off guard. It had been a long time since someone had told her they could fix something broken in her life. Watching him work reminded her of Michael. The way he used to whistle softly while tightening bolts or wiping grease off his hands. The same calm focus, the same patience. "Your dad would be proud," she said quietly. Ethan looked up. His eyes softened. "I hope so." They shared a small smile before he went back to work. Claire stayed with him, even though he told her she didn't need to. She held the light, fetched tools, and handed him a rag when he needed one. The sound of metal against metal filled the evening air, steady and rhythmic. It wasn't just the car being worked on. It was a rare connection forming between two people who'd been quietly drifting apart. By the time he packed up his tools, the sky was dark and a cool breeze swept through the yard. The car was still silent, but there was hope in his voice. "I'll get the parts tomorrow. Shouldn't take long." She thanked him, her voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't have to, Ethan." "Really?" he shrugged, wiping his hands on the cloth. "You've done a lot for me, Claire. Fixing a car is the least I can do." She stood there for a moment after he went inside, listening to the crickets and staring at the car. It was strange, something inside her felt lighter. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel so alone in that house. The next day, Ethan went out early to get the parts. When he returned, Claire offered to help again. They worked side by side in the afternoon sun. She noticed how focused he was, his hands steady, his brow furrowed, the quiet determination in his movements. Every now and then, he'd explain what he was doing in simple words, and she'd nod, even when she didn't fully understand. "You always this patient?" she asked playfully. He smiled. "Only with things worth fixing." The words hung in the air longer than either of them expected. Claire looked away, feeling a strange warmth spread through her chest. She hadn't felt that in a long time, this gentle kind of affection that didn't need to be spoken. Hours later, when the car engine finally made a sound, Claire gasped, "Oh my God, it's alive!" Ethan laughed. "Told you it just needed some attention." The car roared to life, steady and smooth. Claire's eyes filled with tears before she could stop them. She quickly turned away, wiping them with the back of her hand. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded. "It's just, this car means a lot. Michael loved it. It was the first thing we bought together." Ethan's voice was quiet. "I know. He told me once, said it made him feel free. They both stood there listening to the steady hum of the engine, sharing a moment of silence that said more than words could. The past and present seemed to blend for a heartbeat. The memory of a man they both loved hanging gently in the air between them. That night, after dinner, Claire walked past Ethan's room. His door was half open, and she saw him sitting by the window, sketching something in a notebook. He used to draw as a kid mostly cars, bikes, things that moved fast. She smiled quietly, realizing how much time had slipped by. When he looked up and saw her, he smiled. "I was just thinking," he said, "maybe tomorrow we can take it for a drive. Just to make sure everything's working." She nodded. "I'd like that." And she meant it. Not just because of the car, but because of the quiet comfort his company brought. As she went to bed, she couldn't stop thinking about how his father's kindness seemed to live in Benins's patience, his steady hands and his thoughtful silence. The car wasn't the only thing being repaired that week. Something inside her heart, something long buried under loneliness, had started to come alive again. When she closed her eyes that night, she could still hear the sound of the engine running in her mind, steady and reassuring. It wasn't just the rhythm of a Corvette, it was the rhythm of healing. She didn't know what the next few days would bring. But for the first time in years, she looked forward to tomorrow. Ethan had fixed more than metal and wires. Without even realizing it, he had reminded her that life could still move forward. And that broken things, no matter how long they'd been silent, could have come back to life if someone cared enough to try. The next morning, the driveway felt different. The car sat there gleaming faintly in the sun, no longer looking like a forgotten relic. Claire stepped outside with her coffee just as Ethan came out carrying a small toolbox. His face was calm, focused, but there was a quiet satisfaction in his eyes. He'd been up early, finishing the last bit of work. When he turned the key, the engine came alive smoothly, humming like a heartbeat. Claire clapped her hands together, a bright smile spreading across her face. "You really did it, Ethan. It sounds perfect." He laughed softly, rubbing his hands on a rag. "Told you she just needed a little care. Old things usually just need someone to believe they can still work." Something about those words hit her unexpectedly. For a moment, she looked at him not as the boy she'd once known, but as the man standing in front of her now, confident, kind, steady. She nodded and said quietly, "You're a lot like your father." Ethan's smile faded into something gentler. "That means more than you think." To test the car properly, he suggested they take it for a drive. "It'll be good to see how it runs on the road," he said, tossing her the keys. She hesitated, feeling the weight of them in her hand. It had been years since she'd taken a drive that wasn't for errands or appointments. But something about the moment felt right. They drove out of town, the road stretching open before them. The early summer air was warm, and sunlight filtered through the trees, flashing across the windshield in soft patterns. The sound of the engine was smooth, and for the first time in months, the silence between them felt comfortable, not heavy. Ethan rolled the window down, letting the breeze rush in. "You know," he said, "Dad always told me this car reminded him of freedom. He said every road felt like a chance to start again." Claire smiled faintly. "He used to say that to me too. We'd drive 4 hours just to watch the sunset." Ethan glanced at her, then back at the road. "You still could, you know, drive just for yourself. You deserve that." The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. No one had said something so kind to her in a long time. She didn't reply right away. She just looked out the window, watching the fields blur by. The hum of the tires, the smell of summer air, and his calm presence beside her made her feel alive again. They reached the lake by evening. The sky was painted with streaks of orange and pink, and the water reflected the fading light like glass. Ethan parked the car near the edge and turned off the engine. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the gentle splash of the waves. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Dad used to bring me here when I was little." I haven't been back since. They both stepped out of the car and walked to the water. The breeze carried the faint smell of pine and wet earth. Claire wrapped her arms around herself, lost in memory. Ethan stood beside her, his hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the horizon. After a while, she said softly, "You've grown so much. Ethan, I wish Michael could see the man you've become." He looked at her, his expression warm but sad. "I think he can. And I think he'd be grateful you were there when I needed someone." Her throat tightened. "I didn't always do things right," she admitted. "After he passed, I didn't know how to reach out to you. I was grieving, and I thought maybe you didn't want me around." He turned toward her, his voice firm but gentle. "I never blamed you. We both lost him, and I guess we just didn't know how to handle it. But you were still here. You kept this house together. You kept his memory alive. That means something." His words sank deep into her heart. She blinked back tears, nodding slowly. "Thank you," she said quietly. Ethan smiled, that same calm smile his father used to have. "Besides, fixing this Korit's like fixing a part of him. And a part of us." They sat on a bench near the shore, the air cooling as night began to fall. The lake shimmered under the dimming sky. Claire felt peaceful for the first time in years. They talked about small things: his college life, her work, the plans she never got around to finishing. It was simple conversation, but there was a tenderness underneath, an unspoken bond slowly strengthening. When she laughed at one of his stories, Ethan looked at her with a softness that made her pause. There was something in his eyes that wasn't just gratitude. It was deeper, almost protective. She looked away quickly, trying to steady her breath. After a moment, said, "You know, I didn't just fix the car because it was broken. I fixed it because I wanted to see you smile again." The words hit her like a quiet wave. She didn't know what to say. For a long moment, she just looked at him, feeling something gentle but powerful stir inside her. It wasn't romantic, not exactly. It was something more complicated, more human, a deep emotional connection built on loss, care, and healing. "Ethan," she began, but her voice broke slightly. She took a deep breath and smiled instead. "You've done more than that. You've made this house feel alive again." He nodded, his gaze soft. "Then maybe we both fixed something that needed fixing." The sky darkened completely, stars beginning to appear. They sat in silence for a while longer before heading back. The drive home was quiet, but it wasn't empty. The air between them carried warmth, gratitude, and something new neither dared to name. When they pulled into the driveway, Claire turned off the car and looked at him. "Thank you, Ethan, for today. For everything." He smiled. "Any time, Claire." "Really?" She stepped out and paused, glancing back at the car. The headlights glowed for a moment before fading, like a gentle farewell to the day. For the first time since Michael's death, she didn't feel lost. That night, as she lay in bed, the sound of the engine still echoed faintly in her mind. Not loud, not demanding, just steady and comforting, like a heartbeat reminding her that life moves forward. Ethan's kindness had opened something in her she thought had closed forever. Hope. In that one day, he had done what she hadn't been able to do for years, bring back the feeling of being alive. And though she didn't know what would come next, she fell asleep with a quiet smile, the memory of their drive shining in her heart like a soft, golden light. That night, the sky turned gray and heavy with clouds. By the time Claire finished washing the dishes, the first drops of rain had begun to fall against the kitchen window. The soft patter grew louder, and thunder rolled in the distance. She turned off the lights and stood by the window for a moment, watching the rain pour down. The house was quiet except for the sound of the storm. It reminded her of the nights she used to sit there with Michael Him reading the newspaper, her sipping tea, both wrapped in the comfort of silence. Now it was just her, the rain, and the echo of memories. A flash of lightning brightened the living room. The power flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. The house sank into darkness. Claire sighed and reached for the box of candles in the drawer. She lit a few and placed them around the room. Their soft golden glow filled the space, giving it a calm, almost nostalgic warmth. She wrapped herself in a blanket and sat on the couch, listening to the wind rattle the windows. Moments later, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Ethan appeared, holding 2 mugs of steaming hot chocolate. "Power's out," he said with a half smile. Thought you could use this? Claire smiled, touched by the small gesture. You made this. He shrugged lightly. Figured it's what Dad would have done. The words tugged at her heart. He set the mugs down and sat across from her. The flickering candlelight cast soft shadows on his face. The sound of rain filled the silence between them, steady, rhythmic, almost comforting. It's strange, Ethan said after a while, staring into the flickering flame. I used to hate storms when I was a kid, but Dad loved them. Said they made the world clean again. Claire smiled faintly. He used to say that to me too. I never liked them much either. But tonight, it feels different. Peaceful, somehow. He nodded. Maybe it's not the storm. Maybe it's the company. She looked at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. There was an honesty in his tone that made her chest tighten. For a while, they sat quietly, sipping their drinks. The candles flickered softly, and the rain outside seemed to slow, as if the world itself was catching its breath. After a few minutes, Ethan spoke again. I don't think I ever told you this, but I didn't come home just because college ended. I was tired. I didn't know what to do with my life. Everyone seemed to have plans, but I just felt stuck. Claire listened, her heart aching with empathy. That's normal, Ethan. You've been through a lot. Losing your dad, growing up, trying to figure out who you are, it's a lot for anyone. He looked down, his voice quieter. Sometimes I wonder if I even made him proud. Claire reached out instinctively and touched his hand. He was proud of you every single day. He talked about you constantly, how smart you were, how kind, how much potential you had. He loved you more than anything. Ethan met her gaze, and for the first time she saw a tear slip down his cheek. Without thinking, she reached up and brushed it away with her thumb. The gesture was gentle, motherly. But something in that moment felt deeper, two souls comforting each other through shared pain. He didn't move away. He just whispered, I miss him, Claire. I miss how everything used to feel simple. Her voice trembled slightly. So do I. Another flash of lightning lit up the room, followed by a sharp clap of thunder. The sound made her flinch, and before she realized it, Ethan had moved closer. He didn't say anything, just sat beside her, their shoulders almost touching. It's okay, he said softly. Storms pass. Those two words lingered in her heart longer than they should have. She smiled through her tears. You sound just like him sometimes. He chuckled quietly. Guess some things run in the family. They sat in silence for a long while. The only sounds, the soft drumming of rain and the faint crackle of candle wicks. The air between them was heavy, but warm, filled with memories, loss, and a kind of comfort that didn't need words. After a while, Ethan looked around the dimly lit room and said, I think this house feels different now, lighter. Claire tilted her head. Different? How? He shrugged. I don't know. Maybe because you're laughing again. Or maybe because the car's running and you're not walking around looking so tired all the time. It feels alive again. Her heart swelled. She didn't know how to respond, so she simply said, maybe we both needed a little fixing. Ethan smiled at that, his eyes soft. Maybe we did. Another moment passed before he said, you should drive tomorrow. Go somewhere you haven't been in a while. Don't wait for things to happen, just live. Claire looked at him, seeing not the young boy she once helped raise, but a man with a calm soul and a gentle heart. You sound older than your years, Ethan. He smiled. Maybe I just learned from watching you. The wind outside began to die down, and the rain softened into a light drizzle. The storm was finally passing. Claire leaned back on the couch, feeling more at peace than she had in years. The loss she'd carried for so long didn't feel as heavy anymore. Something about that quiet night, about sharing memories and pain, had brought her closer to healing. When she finally stood to blow out the candles, Ethan caught her arm lightly. Hey, he said. Thank you for everything. For not giving up on me when I came back. I know I wasn't easy to talk to at first. She smiled warmly. You don't need to thank me. You brought life back into this house, Ethan. You reminded me that there's still more to look forward to. He nodded slowly, his eyes glistening. I guess we're helping each other then? When she went to bed later, the storm had completely cleared. The house was quiet except for the soft dripping of rain from the roof. She lay awake for a while thinking about the evening, about how natural it had felt sitting with Ethan, sharing stories, comforting each other without any awkwardness or distance. It wasn't just about grief anymore, it was about connection, about understanding. She realized that in helping him find his way, she had also rediscovered herself. The next morning, she woke to the sound of birds outside. The sky was bright and clear, washed clean by the storm. But when she went downstairs, the house was empty. The blanket was folded neatly on the couch, the mugs were washed, and the candles were gone. Something about the quiet felt different this time, almost expectant. She noticed a piece of paper on the counter. Her heart skipped as she saw Ethan's handwriting. He had written, "Thank you for last night. I'll never forget it." The note didn't explain much, but it left her with a strange feeling in her chest, a mix of warmth, sadness, and something unspoken. She didn't know what he meant exactly, but she knew one thing for sure: that night had changed something. Between them, the storm had washed away more than dust, and dirt it had cleared the space for something new to begin, something neither of them had seen coming. The next morning, sunlight filled the kitchen, spilling across the counter and the note Ethan had left behind the night before. Claire rubbed her eyes, still half dreaming, half wondering if the quiet evening they shared during the storm had really happened. The house felt unusually still. She expected to hear footsteps, the clink of a mug, or his voice calling good morning. But the silence stretched on. She walked into the living room. The tools that had been scattered near the door were gone. His shoes were missing. A small ache started in her chest. Something felt off. Then she noticed another folded piece of paper on the table with her name written in his handwriting, Claire. Her hands trembled slightly as she picked it up. The note was short and neat. The words written with care. Claire, thank you for listening last night. Thank you for being there, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. I've been offered a job in Oregon, and I've decided to take it. I leave this afternoon. Before I go, please check the glove box of the car. I left something for you. Ethan. Her breath caught. Oregon. He hadn't said anything about moving. She read the note again, slower this time, her heart tightening with each word. The idea of him leaving so suddenly felt strange, almost unreal. They had just begun to reconnect, to find peace together after so much distance and loss. And now, just like that, he was going. She didn't waste time. Grabbing her keys, she walked outside. The morning air was crisp and fresh after the storm, and the car gleamed faintly in the sunlight. She opened the door and reached into the glove box. Inside was a small velvet box and a folded paper note. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Inside the box wasn't jewelry, but a simple silver keychain. It had a single engraving, "You fixed me too." She felt her eyes fill instantly. Her chest ached, not from sadness exactly, but from something deeper. Gratitude, love, healing. Ethan hadn't just repaired her car. He'd given her back something she thought she'd lost forever. It's a feeling of being seen and cared for. The note that came with it was short, written in his calm handwriting. "When I came home, I thought I was lost. But you reminded me what it means to feel alive again. Don't stop living, Claire. Take drives. Watch sunsets. Laugh often. You fixed more than a car, you helped me find hope. This keychain is just a reminder of that." Her tears fell freely now. She sat behind the wheel, gripping the keychain tightly. The sunlight shimmered through the windshield, warm and golden. It was as if the world had been quietly waiting for her to start again. She put the key in the ignition. The car started instantly, the engine humming steady and strong. The sound made her smile through the tears. She remembered the night he'd fixed it, the way he'd said old things just need someone to believe they can still work. And now, those words felt like they were meant for her too, as she drove through the quiet streets. Memories flooded her mind: Michael's laughter, Ethan's shy smile, the night of the storm. Everything that had once felt broken now seemed to fit together again. She realized that life had given her something rare, a chance to heal not through grand gestures, but through kindness and shared understanding. She reached the lake again, the same one where they'd watched the sunset just a few days earlier. The water shimmered beneath the morning sky, calm and clear after the storm. She parked the car and stepped out, holding the keychain in her palm. For a long moment, she just stood there, breathing in the soft air. Letting the peace of the place settle inside her, she imagined Ethan on a long road, heading west, chasing a new life. She smiled at the thought of Chim, independent, confident, ready to face the world. He was finally stepping into the future his father would have wanted for him. Sitting by the water, Claire whispered softly, "You didn't just fix the car. Ethan, you've fixed my heart too." The wind rustled gently through the trees, carrying the scent of pine and rain. She felt as though the world was answering her, reminding her that every goodbye doesn't have to be an ending. Sometimes it's the start of something new. As she sat there, memories of her late husband drifted through her mind, not with pain, but with warmth. She thought about how Michael had once taught Ethan to fix things, how he'd passed down patience, care, and strength. In Ethan, she saw traces of him not in appearance, but in kindness, in the quiet way he made others feel seen. She took a deep breath, feeling the ache of loss mix with the peace of gratitude. Life had brought her and Ethan together again at just the right time. They had both needed something: closure, healing, connection, and somehow, without even realizing it, they had given that to each other. The clouds drifted across the sky, and the sun rose higher. Claire got back into the car and started the engine once more. The sound filled the air like music. She rolled the windows down and let the breeze flow in. There was freedom in that moment, simple, pure, and long overdue. As she drove away from the lake, she noticed how the road stretched far ahead, golden with sunlight. For years she had lived in the shadows of what she'd lost. But now she felt the quiet strength of what she'd found: a new sense of purpose. A reminder that love never truly disappears. It simply changes shape. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "Thank you, Ethan." The miles rolled by under her tires, the hum of the car steady and soothing. With every turn, the weight on her heart seemed to lift. She thought about writing him a letter, something simple, something that said she was proud of him, that she wished him all the happiness in the world. But for now, it was enough to just drive. The world outside the window was alive again, trees swaying, sunlight dancing across the road, distant mountains glowing faintly on the horizon. She smiled, realizing that even though Ethan had left, his presence would always stay with her. He had reminded her how to move forward, how to breathe again, how to believe in second chances. By the time she reached home, the day had fully bloomed. She parked the car and looked once more at the small keychain gleaming in her hand. "You fixed me too." The words carried so much meaning, more than he could have known. She hung it on her keyring, right next to the one Michael had given her years ago. Two pieces of her life, past and present, trusting side by side. She smiled, knowing that both had helped shape the person she was now, strong, hopeful, ready to keep going. As the afternoon light warmed the house, Claire brewed herself a cup of tea and sat by the window. The world outside was quiet, peaceful, and full of promise. She didn't know where Ethan was at that moment, maybe on a highway, maybe already at his new job, but she knew their story wasn't about distance. It was about growth, kindness, and the simple miracle of two broken souls finding healing in each other. And as she looked at the car parked in the driveway, shining in the sunlight, she whispered with a gentle smile, "You fixed the car, Ethan, but what you really repaired was my heart." The day moved on, and so did she, with hope, peace, and the comforting hum of a life that was once again running just fine.